Maybe it's okay here.
But this is here.
Okay,
Like,
I think we're
yeah,
live.
see, bend, okay?
Yeah, it's good.
Cool.
It's okay
No
here.
broken.
Yeah, good.
Yeah, no broken here.
Give it a few minutes.
But don't you eat this?
Yeah, but we have to do something different.
Hey there, hello. We're live from the Dive
This is
Talk
too big. Maybe go
Factory
here,
with a special guest working on
like this.
the Go. Gus's dad
Yeah.
and Mike, and check it out.
Hello.
Hello. People are coming on now. There's about 66 people on already. Check it out, everybody. If you're coming to DEMA, isn't that going to be cool? This is going to be our beautiful stand that Mike brought. It's a mannequin. We also have a little mini stand back here. You can see that. It's pretty nice. So we hope you come by our booth at DEMA, for those of you going to DEMA. And we're just hanging out in the studio today. This isn't the studio, excuse me. This is the factory. Yep, the Dive Talk. Right now it's just the Dive Talk Go factory. So you can see there's a bunch of stuff here that I'll never touch or use in my entire life, but they will. They will. But it's pretty well done. This factory is ready to go. We are ready to produce lots and lots of Dive Talk Goes. And I will give everybody an update that the Dive Talk online learning platform is very close. Dive Talk Academy, we are in the final stages of testing the course. It's incredible. We've had a lot of people test it. Mike's been in it. We've had a lot of instructors in it. It takes a lot to not only build the course, but make sure the logic is correct, the programming is working, the questions are logical, the answers are logical. So we value, as the spirit of Dive Talk, everybody's input. We're not too proud to fix anything, and it's just a lot to think about. So we are pretty happy. Hey, Steve, and your kids. I was just talking about the Dive Talk Academy. Steve LeSean is on. He is the programmer. So yeah, can you guys all hear me well? And Mike, can you talk?
Hello, can you hear me?
Can you hear Mike and I? Just a couple people say yes. Hello? Yes, beautiful, lots of yeses. Okay, awesome. Well, this is an impromptu live. They're doing some surgery on my Dive Talk Go, so pretty cool. And as always, just feel free to ask us any questions. Mike happens to be in town, so it's a great opportunity to speak with him as well, since he invented this beautiful Dive Talk Go. And in a little while, we're going to actually film one more module for the Dive Talk Academy related to the O2 sensors. For those of you that are rebreather divers, you know how important it is to understand not just that oxygen sensors are monitoring your PO2, but are they monitoring your PO2 accurately? I'm a simpleton. I like to break things down to the simplest method. I really don't care about the science or the fact that the oxygen molecules are more dense and generate more electricity as they get more dense, and that's how the oxygen sensors ultimately read the PO2. That's great. Here's what I care about. Are they reading accurately? And guess which one would be the most important thing for them to do? Are they reading your high PO2 accurately? Because if they're not, you could convulse, right? If it says you have a PO2 that's low, but it's really high, that's really dangerous. And that's how I like to teach. Why is that important? But it's important for people to know about why they may fade at the high level first, and what you should do and how you should do that. What schools did you all go to for diving? Question for everyone. So that's a question. I know you said in a video, Woody, what schools did you all go to for diving? What schools did you all go to? I'm trying to understand what that means. Are you saying, where did I get certified to dive? because I'm forgetting I'm forgetting what that is. Oh, good. We can both sit down. That's great because, and I can put this down and we can read this. Hold on, let me just get this. I can tilt this baby. Give me a second, everybody. We're gonna get this set up so we can.
Maybe they're asking you about who taught you how to dive, where you did your open water. But that's a more interesting question for me. I did my open water training in the Kalahari Desert in Africa in a sinkhole called Leopard's Cavern. So.
What a shocker, right? I mean, he does it in the craziest place ever. Mine was Patty, and it was an instructor. I can't find him anymore. I'm sure he's really old. It was off of Fort Lauderdale Beach, and it was the early days of Patty. I mean, it was a long time ago. And I remember that the course material, it was really difficult. It was so difficult. Hey, Sonny, Woody is my favorite Jew. That's so funny. I miss you, buddy. You need to, by the way, order your Dive Talk Go. DiveTalkGo.com. Sonny, I'm talking to you. It's time. That way we can come to Hawaii and certify you, and then you can become an instructor. You remember that whole plan? Just because you're running the entire military now doesn't mean you can't be on the Dive Talk Go. Anyway, yeah, but it used to be that the courses were really hard, like academically, and the skills in the early days. I mean, advanced open water, the materials were like everything you would do now in a dive master. And what happened was the agencies in the early days all figured out, man, they're not continuing. We're giving them too much to do to go to the next step. It was like insane. And that's when they started breaking the materials down to smaller bites as you advance through your diving. So anyway, that's how I started. Yeah. Let's see. Cool, I love when people's goals are to get certified. That's great. And what's the difference between the Sidewinder and the Dive Talk Go? I'm gonna let the inventor of both of those answer the question. What is the difference between the two?
So they're completely different tools. One is designed for side mount diving and being able to go through small restricted areas, and it's got a larger scrubber capacity, so it has more time. You can stay down longer. The Go is more for recreational diving and less technical.
Yeah. And when we say, Mike's answer is it's less technical or more for recreational diving, the Dive Talk Go. I want to put that in perspective though. The Dive Talk Go, Gus and I did a video, we haven't released it yet, and we compared it to every rebreather out there that submitted their information for Advanced Diver magazine. This was really interesting. And we noticed that it's literally right in the middle of every rebreather in almost every category except for one. It's at the top of the work of breathing. So it's not our opinion. And why I want to put that into perspective is, look, the Dive Talk Go is rated for a 2.5 hour dive, and we're going to take it all the way to normoxic level where you can dive it to 200 feet. So when we say, well, it's made for more recreational, this thing, how many dives in your life have you done more than 2.5 hours? I mean, for me, it's a handful. Like after a couple of hours of drift diving, plus 200 feet is very, very deep. So I want you to understand it's extremely robust and technical. You are taking a technical dive class when you take a Dive Talk Go class. Why is it technical? Because you will have deco. A non-technical dive class in RSTC words is you can go to the surface at any time without stopping. That's what non-technical diving is. Well, you're going to be on the Dive Talk Go and 2.5 hour dive, our second level class. where you're, down to 100 feet or whatever for a long time, you're going to have a decompression obligation. You're going to have to go up, you're going to have to stop and watch your dive computer and off gas appropriately. So it is a technical rebreather.
Somebody asked if it has 3 sensors.
So why don't you tell them about the sensors and why 3?
So we want to use 3 sensors because sensors can fail. And we need redundancy. And if you just had 2 sensors and one of them failed, you wouldn't know right away which one's the right one and which one's not without validating it. But if you have 3 sensors, then most likely 2 sensors will read correctly and one won't. It's still a good idea to validate that, but that does take a little bit of time. So we use 3 so that you have redundancy and in case there's an error.
Yeah. See what I'm saying? So we have a gas, just for those of you who are a little bit more technical, we have a known gas always with us. Our diluent gas is a gas that we have that we know we can use at any point in the dive, at the deepest point in the dive. This is how we plan, and we'll teach you about this in the course. But think about it. If you have a known gas, then the shear water is programmed with that known gas, and you can click a button on the shear water and ask it, what should my PO2 be reading at this depth? Then you flush the unit with that known gas and you look at your sensors and they will tell you, you will see which ones are reading that PO2. Those are the ones that you can rely upon if 1 or 2 of them are out, basically to get you up to the surface. Remember also on a rebreather, you always can bail out. You can get off the loop, turn off your O2, and just breathe, open circuit. Change your computer, go to the surface. So that's the concept.
So somebody asked about CO2 sensors, and I have an issue with CO2 sensors in a rebreather for several reasons. But the main one is the human body is a great CO2 sensor in itself. You will see signs and symptoms of CO2 or hypercapnia long before it's a danger to you. But one of the serious CO2 incidents I had was when I put my rebreather together one time. We were out in the Yucatan jungle, and I had handled some chemicals and didn't realize it and got them on my mushroom valve, and the mushroom valve disintegrated after I built my rebreather, and so I didn't know it. So I was exhaling gas and then re-inhaling it, okay? And so on the dive that I did, I was headed to a little over 200 feet deep on air, and we were going through hydrogen sulfide and other toxic things also, and I was doing my descent, and I started thinking, man, I am getting way narked. I'm dropping way faster than I should. And so I looked at my computer, and it was saying that I was only like 80 feet instead of like 180 feet. And I thought, oh, there's something wrong. So I bailed out, aborted the dive, went up, and then later I found that I was getting hypercapnic because of the mushroom valve. So if I would have had a sensor in the rebreather, it would have been with the oxygen sensors, right? Yep. And it would have been reading correctly because that wasn't where the problem was. So if I would have looked at my computer and it said, no, you're okay, keep going, I would have, right? So until we can put a sensor in the mouthpiece where it'll read a true reading, then there's no point in putting a sensor in.
That is such a great explanation. I really never thought of that.
Because bad information is worse than no information when it comes to CO2.
And you are a CO2 sensor, right?
Yeah.
You can feel it. You're going to start breathing rapidly. That's a perfect explanation. And the mushroom valve he's talking about with the rebreather, remember, a rebreather is a paper bag. We're breathing in and out the same air, except for we remove the CO2 if the air is traveling in the right direction to go into the scrubber. The mushroom valve opens, allows the air to flow one way to go into the scrubber. But if the mushroom valve is not allowing that air, he's going to breathe that air right back into his mouth, in and out, without ever going into the scrubber. I mean, you could get hypercapnia, and frankly, you could die. So he just bails out. So that's great. Does a rebreather need to be cleaned, sterilized internally? If so, what is the process?
Yes, so there are components in the rebreather that you will build up saliva in, and your exhaled breath goes through and things like that, and bacteria can grow there. So yes, you do need to sterilize those parts. The scrubber itself is caustic and will sterilize a lot of the area. So some of the parts it's not necessary to sterilize, but some of the parts it is. And so you do need to maintain that, or else you can be growing some super fungus in there. And
yeah, and we generally use this. It's in our course. It's called Steramine. It's super easy. I mean, here's the directions right on the back, right? And in our course, we tell you how to go about when you should and how to go about sterilizing, cleaning your unit. You don't have to do it after every dive. We generally do it like after a trip. So if we're going away to the Dive Talk meetup, we've dove the unit for a week, you know, you're going to put it away, but before you put it away, you'll sterilize it. You'll sterilize the components where your air was, the loops, the counter lungs, primarily.
somebody asked if it can emit clips to communicate with toothed whales or dolphins. I would be terrified that we would be saying the wrong thing to them. Yeah, we might say something bad and get thrown out.
Let's see, do you guys plan on covering the Titan tragedy at some point? I'll comment on that one because I've been asked this question so many times, and I just don't feel qualified. We get asked a lot of times to comment on stuff, and I need to bring somebody on there that is way more qualified to cover it.
We need a new T-shirt. Somebody said, "Yeah, don't cuss at the whales."
Yeah, I just gave Mike a cool new shirt. I'll show it to you.
It's right inside the door of my van.
Why? You can keep answering questions. I'll show you the new shirt I gave him. And don't chop me down, everybody. Yes, the logo was made by AI, but we're not selling it. So it's just for our fun use. But check it out. Here's Mike's new shirt. I just gave it to him as a gift. That thing ate that thing. And I just printed a bunch of them. We're going to give them away. They're not for sale. I know.
Somebody said we should preface our answer to the question, 3 sensors is an industry standard. There are a few rebreathers that have CO2 sensing in them, but again, I wouldn't put one in a rebreather until you can put it in the correct location.
By the way, you know, I think technical diving only really should be super technical and for macho people. That's why I add all these cool colors and loop colors onto the loop hoses, right? But you know what's amazing about this? We're going to talk about it with the creator of these shoes. This is Scooby-Doo Rags. These actually are a safety item because if Mike, who I just know picked blue, I'm looking over, I see his blue loop hoses, I know that's Mike. It's really easy to identify the diver by having these on, and they protect the loops from the sun and stuff like that.
Oh, here's a good play on words. What kind of gear do I need if I'm drowning in debt? Yeah, the Go won't help you there.
It's a tough one.
Yes, we do have an upcoming trip. I'm going to take Woody and Gus into a cave system down in Cozumel.
Yes.
Where we're going to do a lot of exploration, and we are going to do some mapping. Hopefully we'll have a surface location set up. So we'll go in and put a transmitter in the cave at a known place, and then from the surface we will locate that point so we can tell how accurate our map is.
Wow.
And so that'll be some interesting film. We're gonna have to shoot a lot of film there.
Definitely. We'll shoot a lot of film, and I've been asked this a lot before. Look, I'm not a cave explorer unless I'm with Mike. Does that make sense? And I told them, even on this trip, like, I want to be with Mike and I want to be with Randall because I cannot tell you how it is an entirely different level of skill. Like you can't just go exploring a new cave and think you know what you're doing. It's really a lot more to it, and you need a lot of experience. So yeah, I get to go cave exploring because I'm with a cave explorer, right? I'm a certified cave diver. I'm not a they probably should invent a course like cave exploration course. It's another level. I mean, a lot of multitasking. You could be disoriented. You're going into areas that nobody's ever been or seen. And where do you go? There's no line. You're carrying a line, but it's tricky. And mapping, that's a whole nother really hard skill.
Did you have any long-term effects from getting bent? Or are you back to 100%?
100%. I mean, I can't even, it's really strange, the whole thing. I think back on it, just my symptoms and what I was feeling, and I don't know, I've done even more rigorous dives since then, and there's been nothing.
Well, one of the things is your physiology is going to be different every day. And if you're a little dehydrated, you're a little exhausted, a little bit, if you create the perfect storm. And so, the better you can alleviate those things, the better, for sure.
But what I did learn, for those of you out there, is I'm going to reiterate this message because I think it's super important. You don't know you're bent. You think you're not bent when you go on oxygen, and you don't want to mess up anybody's time, and you cannot listen to the diver. Just whatever they're saying, that's the least amount of relevance you should have. Other than their symptoms, take them to medical attention and ignore that they're saying, I'm fine now, I'm good now, and all of that, right? It's very hard to do that because the bends is very strange. You can be totally normal, be just like this. Mike, I'm fine now, let's go eat. Matter of fact, I'm hungry, I feel great. And he'll be like, are you sure? I'm like, no, I'm great, I'm perfect. That's what it was like. It was that deceiving until it got warped, because it creeps on slowly. These bubbles are slowly coming out. It's not like, oh my gosh, all of a sudden I'm bent. Now, when I came to the surface, and for me, my symptoms were, guys, I'm so exhausted that I cannot stand up. I don't know what's going on. I fell towards the oxygen. I knew to do that in my mind, and it's like my breathing was erratic. It was really weird.
Somebody mentioned Brazil, and there are some phenomenal caves in Brazil, and someday I'm going to get down there and dive with them. Somebody asked, how much has your cave diving tragedy coverage made you more conscientious of a diver?
A lot more, really. Much more just that what I just said. Like you gotta be aware. If somebody's saying they're feeling something, then you need to be with them, on them, and probably seek medical attention without hesitation.
Yeah, somebody mentioned I'm on my phone. I'm actually reading the questions because I can't see as far as the camera.
That's why I have to keep sliding in and out. So he's on his phone, so he can
So
read
I'm
your
trying to
question.
read the questions.
Yeah.
I have never been bent. I've always tried to be very conservative, and there are actually a few things that can help you prevent getting bent. One of them is dehydration. Okay, stay well hydrated. Which, when people are diving a dry suit, a lot of times they don't want to do that because they don't want to have to pee during the dive, And so the P valve has actually probably saved a lot of people from being bent, because then it takes that issue away. But another thing that most people didn't realize is that 15 minutes of cardio within 24 hours of your dive will reduce your chances of being bent by a significant amount, like 40%. And if you did 15 minutes per day for a week leading up to the dive, it does even more, because if you do 15 minutes of cardio, it produces, I think, lactic acid or something like that. Mm-hmm. Anyway, it changes your blood chemistry, and that change actually helps prevent you from getting bent.
So there you go. Some more good advice. I didn't know that either. I got close because I do like you guys. I'm just trying to read the questions. Can you show how the air flows through the Go scrubber? Yeah. What's the burn pattern? That's great. I'm going to hold it up. Yes, we can. As a matter of fact, I have one right here. It's mine, and I'm going to let Mike explain it. That's a really cool question. I think it's pretty interesting. Let me sit down with it. Give me a second, because we'll show you the whole thing. And I'm going to put the loop on the outside so at least you can see it.
Yes, Woody's hit was an undeserved hit. He followed all the rules,
Yeah,
but like we said, it was a perfect storm, and got him on that day. If any one little thing would have been different, he probably would not have got bent. But
yeah, I even was super conservative. I added extra deco. I always add an extra minute, and 1 extra minute is a lot.
why don't you grab one of the shells? Might be easier to open than a complete. Oh, wait, here's one.
So look, this is the Go. I'll give a quick explanation and the mic can go in the internal. So look, this is the Go. This is the mouthpiece. It goes in my mouth. When I exhale, the air goes this way. The mushroom valve allows the air to go this way, down into the scrubber, which is right here. Then it continues and it goes into these counter lungs. It's like a storage compartment, right? Because it's a closed loop. The air's got to go somewhere. When I inhale, it brings them back out of the counter lungs, back into the sorb, up this loop into my mouth. It's a continuous circle. However, if I only had that, I would start to lose my oxygen, right? Because I'm metabolizing some of it. So we have a little oxygen bottle on the bottom. Can you see it? And that's trickling in oxygen always. A little bit of oxygen, called a constant mass flow. But if it's not enough, I have another button right here. It says oxygen. I push it to add a little bit more oxygen. And it's reading that. Can you see this connector? My shear water's right here, connected, because there are 3 sensors inside this part of the Go. But the inside, I'll let Mike explain the actual airflow. But that's the basic concept. And then he can show you the inside.
All right, inside the rebreather, first the air goes in, this portion here connects that to 1 counter lung, but it also has a passageway that comes down to this front face here, which on the inside you can see there's a gap behind this screen. So all the air flows across this screen and dissipates out. Your scrubber material is in here, and there's another screen that goes on the top of the scrubber, which has another air cavity then. And in that air cavity, we have our oxygen sensors. And then it goes through a port up into this passage, which allows it to go into the other counter lung and the breathing hose. So what we've got here is a real short bed for the scrubber for you to have to breathe through, but a lot of surface area. So it breathes way better and scrubs more efficiently the more you can dissipate the air out over a larger surface. If you were to have a really small diameter but really long, it would be hard to breathe through, and it would also not scrub as well as a really wide surface with a real short bed. As long as you don't make it so short that it gets a channeling through it.
Yeah, we should probably add that exact explanation into our course coming up. That's a really good explanation of it. Any advice for someone, give me a second, I'm moving close so I can read this. Any advice for someone that lives far away from most dive opportunities that wants to become a tech dive, cave diver? Diving is my passion, but I worry won't get enough practice for the skills. Well, I will say for cave diving, I do think you need to stay in practice, right? It's a skill and it can go away quickly. I would the advice would be to try to get a mentor or somebody that you really want to learn from. And then the rest is just.
So is it a
adjusting your
safety
life.
reason for the 200-foot depth rating, since recreational diving max is 130 feet? So the depth rating on most rebreathers is based on a couple different things. Most times it's based on work of breathing, because the deeper you get, the denser the gas is, and the denser the gas is, the harder it is to breathe. So if you were to go to 100 meters deep, that's at 10 atmospheres. So the gas is actually 10 times more dense than it is on the surface. And so that extra resistance of breathing needs to be below a certain level in order for it to be considered safe. And so work of breathing is the primary reason for a depth rating. That doesn't apply on the go here because we have a phenomenal work of breathing. But the problem with that is if we were to plan, say, a 100-meter dive, we would end up with 4 to 5 hours of decompression, and we don't have enough scrubber for that. And so you have to kind of pick a balance then. How deep is a good depth to go to with just enough time that you can have a safe decompression schedule and still be acceptable?
Yes. Somebody asked a question about the sensors and that is it like a battery or do they wear out, or what do we do about that whole situation?
Ooh, sensors can get complicated. Sensors are essentially the galvanic sensors. Now, there's a lot of different types of sensors, okay? But the sensors that we're using in rebreathers now are galvanic sensors. And basically, they have 2 electrodes in there and a fuel in between. And that fuel reacts with oxygen. And so the more oxygen there is, the more reaction there is, and the more reaction is, the more millivolts it creates, okay? So, but in essence, it is a fuel cell. And so at some point, it is going to run out of fuel. And when it runs out of fuel, it has to be replaced. Well, it has to be replaced before it runs out of fuel because it's hard to estimate when that's going to happen. So for safety reasons, we replace the sensors once a year.
Yeah, and we also do a test when we're assembling the unit. It's called a linearity test. So we're determining the accuracy of the sensors, both reading low and high PO2 compared to what they should be reading, because we know theoretically based on math, this is what they should be reading in millivolts, this is what they are reading in millivolts, how accurate are they? And if they drop below 85%, even if 1 year hasn't passed, we also change them on that. So they have to be 85% or more accurate, or 1 year. Whichever occurs first, we replace the sensors. Why do some divers have snorkels, but they have tanks? Well, a long time ago, the agencies came up with that as a safety item for recreational diving, that when you get on the surface, you have a backup situation, which is your snorkel, so that you can basically look down, or if you're swimming back to the boat and you run out of air, you have your snorkel. It's a sort of a safety item.
Well, and it comes in handy, like if there's rough seas, you can keep your mask on, you can put your snorkel on, and the waves will hit you, and you can still breathe. I mean,
and look
there's times it's nice to have a snorkel.
Yeah, and it just keeps your bearing, right? You know where you are, you're looking down in the water, but you're not using up all your air. A lot of times when we dive off of a dive boat, you don't want to use your air, but you have to pull yourself to the front of the boat from the back of the boat, and it can be somewhat strenuous, so you need to do that kind of face down. You don't want to breathe all your air when you're doing that, so if you have a snorkel, you can do that and then switch to your regulator when you get to the down line. So those types of reasons. What are decompression stops like? Do you just stop swimming up?
Oh, yeah. Decompression can be boring. Sometimes it's nice out in the ocean because if there's a reef or something, you can stay watching stuff go by. But like we're in a cave and we have several hours of decompression, it's really boring to just hang there. And so we've actually started taking waterproof housing with a video and watching movies.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. But basically, to answer your question, yeah, you stop swimming up, you watch your dive computer, and you stop at that, and it will tell you your deco time obligation on your dive computer. it will literally be saying you need to be at this depth for this long, and it counts down, and then it lets you move up to the next level.
No, you cannot physically feel anything during decompression. You don't feel the bubbles leaving you or anything. You just sit there until it's until the computer tells you you're done.
Yep. What made you guys get into cave diving? I'm going to let Mike speak first because he's been in it for a very long time.
Well, I was taking some more advanced courses, and I went over to a dive shop over in Oklahoma City, and I was waiting for my instructor to get ready. I can't even remember what course I was taking. I think it was a maintenance class. Anyway, they had a television playing one of Wes Skiles' films of Peacock Springs, I believe it was. And I was just mesmerized. I was like, oh man, that looks so cool. The water was so clear. I mean, from Arkansas, that's, you know. And the water was so clean, and I just thought that was so impressive. And my instructor came in and goes, hey, we're doing that next weekend. You want to start? I was like, yes. So that's what got me started.
Well, for me, I went to Inner Space and I actually watched his crazy presentation. Honestly, that's probably what really initiated my mind, and I was fascinated by it. I thought he was crazy because the holes that he was climbing in, I'm like, they're tiny. I don't even think you can get through them, but he can. And he was so nice to me, and I'm like, oh my God, you're like the legendary cave diver. And I was asking him questions, and he was just super welcoming, like, you know, yeah. And then I went further, and I decided after talking with Mike, Doug Ebersol said, you know, I can teach you like cavern. Like cavern is before you get into the cave zone, which means you still have light. You can still see the surface. And I really enjoyed the technical aspects and the learning, and I thought it improved my diving a lot. So I loved the fact that my diving escalated. Just as a regular diver, you really enhance your diving. And then Doug said, you really should get cave certified so I can come with you and we can go to the Crystal Caves of the Bahamas. But while you're there, you might as well get cave certified from one of the greats, which is Brian Kecook. I'm like, well, that's a big challenge, right? He's probably one of the greatest cave divers out there, but the caves are so spectacular. So my first cave diving experience, I kind of started at the top of the pinnacle because I'm like, are all caves like this? I mean, I saw, you know, the Crystal Caves, and each dive in my training, I think it was like 11 days straight, I would get to see more and more. And I was like, it can't be better than this today, Brian. He's like, oh, it gets better.
It gets better.
And better. I thought day one was already like, this is absolutely incredible, like 300 feet into the cave. And that's it. That's how it happened for me.
So somebody asked how we did decompression in the early days. So what we had a depth gauge and a timer, and we would write ahead of time. We would write our plan. We plan to go to a certain depth. We plan to stay for a certain amount of time. But then we would put contingencies, and we would write this big slate out that had all of our decompression stops on it and our contingency stops. If we stayed an extra minute, we had to do this. You know, if we stayed 2 minutes extra, you know. And so it was very complicated if things went wrong and you overran your time. Our basic plan was just to breathe every bit of gas we had, so we had to come out.
Exactly, that's how
Which
it
we
was.
did have one dive where everything went wrong and the schedule went out the window, and it was. But there's people like Sheck Exley, who was a mathematician by nature, and he was able to calculate stuff in his head, which I was never smart enough to do that. But
and you could take the tables with you. They had these little foldable tables. I remember having them in my BC in the early days in case something went wrong. But
oh yeah, that was the best invention when IETD came out with
Exactly.
Trimix tables
they literally came out
that
with
you could put in your pocket.
Exactly, like these waterproof ones. But that's how you did it. You really needed to watch your timer and be at that depth for that amount of time. And it was just a timing thing.
Let's see, squeezing through a gap in a cave. Don't you worry about getting your equipment snagged or turned off. You don't worry so much about getting it turned off, and you try to keep snagging to a minimum because you try to keep everything really streamlined. But I have been in situations where my tank would, you're side mounting, and the back of your tanks would go up and get caught, and you're trying to back out because you can't make it all the way through, and your tanks get caught, and so you're trying to reach back there and pull them down and wiggle them a little bit. And I did have a buddy one time. We were in Shangri-La, and he got stuck. He got stuck so bad he couldn't move. And
I was in that little cave.
and so I came back for him, and I couldn't find what he was hanging on. So finally, I just grabbed a hold of his harness like this, and just physically pulled him through. And when we got out, the cam bands on your tank, that stainless steel ring, I had bent it. That's what it was hanging.
That thing is so tight. I couldn't even keep my head down because it would
Oh, yeah.
it was pushing. So you literally, to move forward, I was with Maddie, I had to turn my head to go
Yeah, and on a
further.
rebreather, it's even worse because the hoses are, you can't.
Oh my God, this thing
Yeah.
is incredibly tight. But you need to be side mount to answer your question as well. Another way to help avoid getting tangled is not to have anything on your back. That's why Mike invented, that's why the Sidewinder became so popular for cave divers, because it was a side mount rebreather. The scrubbers and the tanks were all on your side.
So it says, how do you keep up with stamina while not diving, and how do you train to keep breathing normal? The thing is that when you get to these levels of diving, you have to have a mindset where if something goes wrong, you have to stay calm, because really panic is what kills most people. And so sometimes you have to actually stop and take a breath and relax and formulate a plan, because if it's not going to help you get out, then you don't do it, And so sometimes you have to just stop and breathe and say, okay, there's an answer, I just have to find it. And so, but yeah, panic is the worst thing.
Definitely. And for me, I don't know what it is. I've always found being underwater, even in the tight spots, I get really actually relaxed, like really chilled. I don't know why. So for me, it's a calming effect under there.
Woody, would you consider buying a super nice camera like Jonathan has to film dives?
No, because I'm just not anywhere close to having that level of patience or ability, and there's too many great guys that can do it way better than me.
With the GoPro and a lot of the other action cams that have come out recently, the investment is so low, and the risk of loss. I remember we were shooting a documentary down in Puerto Rico, and the guy said, I'm going to put this camera on you, and for this dive. And I said, well, it's okay. And he was going to mount it on, I think, my light head. And I said, it needs to be okay that I don't bring it back. And he goes, wait a minute, let me get a different camera. I was like, because it may not come back. Somebody asked about solid state sensors on the go. So yes, you can run solid state sensors. There are a couple of manufacturers of solid state sensors now. They're not like Poseidon is using a solid state sensor, but it's not compatible with, say, the shearwater and stuff. Oxygen Scientific, though, has made an excellent solid state sensor that will just plug in just like a regular sensor, and we have those available for the go. The thing is we don't recommend that you run 3 solid state sensors, though, because you need the redundancy, and part of that redundancy would be to have some different sensors, some galvanic ones to validate. And solid state sensors are kind of new technology, and personally, I need to build some faith in it a little bit, and so I wouldn't want to switch to all 3 solid state sensors just yet, although I've done a lot of dives with where I actually ran 3 galvanic sensors and 3 solid state sensors, and they read really close, but it's new technology still.
But they are coaxial, which I like, right? They're really easy to plug in. Looks like this, the connectors in our sensors.
Let's see, what is your opinion of bounce diving?
Yeah. Gus just said the same thing. They're coaxial sensors. Funny, Gus, we were thinking the same thing. I didn't even see you type that.
So somebody asked, what is our opinion on bounce diving? As long as you stay within the deco limit and the safe ascent, you think it is viable or even safe? It's a physiology question. What if you're not doing really good on that day and you're kind of pushing the boundary of the decompression limit, or you're pushing the boundaries of the ascent rate? And bounce diving doesn't really have a purpose, because if you go diving to be diving, to go and see things and stuff. Most people that do bounce dives, it's just to make a record. You know, hey, I made it to 140 feet, or I made it to 200 feet and come back up. There's not really a lot of purpose to that. I mean, if you're going to do a dive to 200 feet, it needs to have a purpose. You need to say, oh, I'm going to go see this cool artifact or this cool wreck at 200 feet. And there's no point in bouncing and doing it. You might as well enjoy it and do a proper decompression and, you know, just enjoy it. So personally, I don't think there's a purpose to bounce diving.
Yep. Let's see, I managed to do my...
On that note, people that dive for records usually do it until they get bent, hurt, or die. And so there's not a lot of purpose in seeking records, in my opinion.
Agree. So I managed to do my first season as a dive master in Malaysia. Wow, jealous already. Still fairly new and got a lot to learn, but getting there. I've always wondered what makes a dive master competent and incompetent. That's a pretty good question. In my opinion, if you are a dive professional of any kind, what makes you competent is your attitude. So if you are really going to be in that role as a professional and you're guiding, you're teaching, you're leading the dive in any way, shape, or form, you have to become unselfish on that dive. And you have to tell yourself the purpose of this dive is to make sure that the people that I'm guiding, teaching, leading are okay. That makes you a good dive master. That makes you a good professional.
Yeah.
It's more about that than the knowledge or do you have perfect skill set. This is my opinion. Because if you don't care about the people that you're diving with and you're just all about you, it's all about your ego and look how great I am, you're not a good professional. You're not fulfilling the obligation of making sure that they're safe and okay. And that's a sacrifice.
Here's a really good question for you, Woody. For boat diving and liveaboards, how would you go about coordinating with the operators and dive masters if you're diving longer than most of the other recreational divers?
Well, you do have to coordinate, and you have to be sure that they're willing to allow you to do that. So that number one is it okay with them, right? They have to have a plan. Now, we've done that in a number of cases, and they know that we're going to do that. And then we set up a plan also for, okay, this is going to be the length of time that we're going to do that dive. They know the general direction that we're going to be going in if it's drift diving, and we're going to always shoot an SMB when we're done. So you need to stick with your plan. It's even more important, way more important, to stick with your plan if you're going to deviate from what the majority of the group's going to do, because you're going to go off with your little team of tech divers because they're relying. If you say, well, we're going to go for 2 hours and we're going to be drifting north, then you need to come up at 2 hours. You fire your SMB and...
Or they may ask you to have an SMB the whole time so they can keep an eye on you. But the main thing here is you need to approach the operator with the right attitude. You need to go and ask for permission, not go and tell them what you're going to do and make them accommodate you. You need to go ask for permission. Say, hey, can we do this? If we do this, what would you like to see from us so that you know we're safe and we know it's okay?
Yeah, I think, let's see, Gus may have added something there. We make it easier for the operator to support longer dives. For example, during the meetup, we just have all rebreather divers and tech divers on the same boat. So that is another way that We try to do it where we're with a group of tech divers, so we're all on the same profile. But there are times where we're not, and it's a lot of that happens when you're, jumping on a boat in South Florida. You're going to have a mixture of divers. You need to get that permission and set that plan up with the operator. Just like Mike said, be respectful and follow that plan. Sticking to the plan is essential, exactly. Need to talk to Gus about him thinking it's fine to run an hour late. Yeah, that's fair. I'm not going to criticize. That's right. You cannot do that, man. It really
We have not been to Norway yet. Yet is the key word there.
I've been there, but I haven't been diving there. But it's the cold part is tricky. Let's see. I'm scrolling. Everybody, bear with me because I don't want to miss your questions.
Gus had a family event to go to. It's his son was in a lacrosse tournament.
Yeah, that's all.
And so he's out supporting his family.
No ego diving, right, Woody? Yeah. I mean, I don't even understand it, man. I don't even know what this whole ego thing creeped into diving. So it's.
What happens when you're mid-cave dive and you need a toilet break?
Wow, thank you for the super chat too. I'm going to read that. Well, you answer that one because you do longer cave dives than me. That's for sure.
It depends on if it's number one or number two. Number one is pretty easy because we actually have on a condom catheter and a hose that runs outside your suit, so you can just pee anytime you want. The other, however, has never been a problem for me, and I don't know why, but I think it has to do with pressure. Once you're under pressure stuff, you just don't have to go anymore. Mm-hmm. So.
Yep. So thank you for the super chat, by the way. For Common Sense 200 asks, would either of you be as dedicated to digging out filled-in caves as Matt Carricker from Demolition Ranch? He just finished digging out a 40-foot vertical pit, and he is still finding caves. So that is definitely a Mike question because I've never done anything like that.
I'm sorry, what is our question?
So there's a guy, his name is Mike. He's a big YouTube channel, and he's the question is, would you ever be as dedicated as that person to actually dig and find a new cave and then explore the cave? Like, have you done stuff to that level?
Yes, we had one cave where we were in it and we were down to the 5th restriction, and the restriction was choked up with gravel. And so we spent several months where every weekend we would go and we would do about 5 hours of digging gravel out and getting it out of the cave. And we did that for months on end. We removed, I don't know how many tons of gravel just to get through that restriction.
I remember that, actually, the video, and
yeah.
His unbelievable video he has showing him bringing up that.
We actually at one point built a dredge, so we were vacuuming the gravel up, and then we would rotate. After 30 minutes, we would rotate, and the guy that had been diving would do his decompression on the top of the, and would be vacuuming it to the next level.
Oh my. Yeah, Mike's done some incredible stuff. Gus said, we spoke to Matt at Demolition Ranch a few months ago, but they sealed the entrance of the cave. We would love to collaborate with Matt. So that's right, Gus. I remember that now. Yes, let's see here.
There's some cavers in the UK, though, dry cavers,
yeah,
that have been digging on this one entrance for, I don't know, like 10 years. They have work days. They all go. They put scaffolding in place to keep the rock steady, and they're down in there pumping water out and digging.
Yes, and some people are commenting they've seen your video on that. I happen to remember that one as well. Yes, that's the next level stuff. Yes, we know Slovakia. Do you even know this country? Yes. Maybe we could come there. I don't know.
I actually have a friend who did. He was a professor, and he spent several years dry caving in Slovakia as part of his doctorate.
Yeah, and it's awesome. We just get people from all over.
Incredible deep caves over there, Woody, like,
Oh my
like
gosh.
1,500 meters of vertical on rope for, can you imagine climbing that much rope?
Incredible. There's so much to be discovered. I mean, we've barely touched.
So what was behind the gravel?
Oh,
Well, there was another restriction.
oh my goodness.
Yeah, sure enough, we went and we went through, once we got through that restriction, the next one we could get through if we just took one tank off. We went through that restriction, and then there was this little crack. It was only about this wide, okay? And it went straight down for like another 100 feet. And then it got to a point where we couldn't go without like physically damaging the cave. We would have had to like take air hammers in there and, you know, bust out the cave. And so we're like, okay, we'll quit going here.
Well, a question that comes up often that he just made me think of, so I'm going to ask him, and it's okay, you can answer it honestly, is when you are doing cave exploration, and let's take the crystal caves of the Bahamas. They're probably the most beautiful caves in the world. During exploration, do you have to damage crystal? And what's sort of the protocol? What's okay, what's not okay?
So,
How do you judge that? Like,
yeah, well, unfortunately, you are going to do some damage, right? And so typically what we do is we pick a path where the least amount of damage could be done, and then we designate this path. So there's a lot of dry caves where they're just beautifully decorated, and they'll actually physically have a pathway marked out with flagging tape. You do not step off of this line. This part, it's okay. We know we're going to damage this, but this part is not. We're going to keep this untouched. And like in Lechuguilla Cave out in New Mexico, they are worried about inadvertently bringing bacteria and things into the cave and it'll no longer be a pristine environment because it's been influenced in some way, right? And so they have these lakes down there that they can get drinking water out of because these trips are like weeks long. And so they have to camp. Everything that goes in comes back out, including your waste. But like to get drinking water, so they have a designated sterilized pitcher in there, and it has a line on it. And you're only allowed to touch on this side of the line, and the water can only touch on that side of the line. And they try as hard as they can to keep any kind of contamination out of the cave. But there is going to be some. And so like the crystal caves, like Brian down there, I'm sure that some formations accidentally get broke in the exploration process. It's just you try to keep it to a minimum, and you try to keep it in a known corridor.
Have you ever done any marine biology conservation dive work? That's the kind of work I'd love to be involved with if they do exist. Well, interestingly enough, Gus and I have been invited, which I never dreamed I would ever be going to in my life, to Saudi Arabia. We are going to Saudi Arabia in January. We were invited by King Abdallah University, and they are doing, from what I understand, the most amazing, the highest level of technology of reef restoration and reef growth. And we're going to get to see it. I mean, they have the money, that's for sure, right? Unlimited funds, and we're getting to be guest speakers. Now, what's interesting, Gus and I joke about it all the time, they invite as guest speakers like these award-winning, incredibly intelligent, PhD level scholars, and then Gus and I. Well, here we are from Dive Talk, but I do think we can add something different. For me, it's that the biggest thing I will be talking about is, first of all, is it real? And I have witnessed a considerable amount of change from when I was a child and used to go to petty camp in the Keys to now. You can't even recognize it. It doesn't even look like the same reef, molasses reef. I'm like, man, what happened? So number one, it's real. Why does it happen? Why is it happening? I'm going to save my opinion on that for Saudi Arabia. And can we really do anything about it? Which I think is a yes. I'm going to talk about yes and what I think we can do about it from a diver's perspective, from all of us around the world that are divers, because we're the ones under there seeing it, and we're such a small fraction of the population. So that's about the most amount of marine biology that I'm going to get to do.
Well, we get, like, for example, next weekend, guess where I'm going?
I
Going
know
to
you're
the
gonna find a
Yucatan.
species, right?
Yeah. No, so there's a biologist that is going to explore a new system in the Yucatan, and he needs a dive buddy because not all scientists can go where we can go. And so he's taking me along to keep him safe.
Yes, and when I go with Mike, and he usually comes, this biologist, he is taking samples, and I found a critter, my own brand new critter.
That's right.
And that critter never ever was found. And they put it in a microscope, and they run it through a database to see is it just a migration of an existing critter or whatever? But mine wasn't. The woody critter was never found. I found something for the first time, and I was so excited, like, holy mackerel, and I saw this little thing.
Might be a complete new species.
It's amazing, right? So it's pretty exciting. They are finding new species, literally, that have never been discovered before in these caves.
No, he did not keep it. It went to the university they're doing DNA testing on it, and they're going to write up a genome profile on it to see if it truly is a new species.
But that's a big part of why we go there. And the other reason, Mexico is big on allowing Mike, he gets the permits and gets the permission to do the cave exploration, is they're concerned about their water source. I mean, where's the water coming from? Where should we not damage? Map these systems out. It's not just, wow, cool, I found a new cave and no one's ever been there. I mean,
Well, we provide a lot of important data to them. Like, for example, we were exploring a cave, and we come back there, like 6 months later, and they were doing this big construction project, and we told the head of the construction company, was like, that excavator there's over a big room, and there's only like 4 feet of rock. and so he was like, excellent, let me see the maps. We don't need to have any accidents here. So
it's cool. And there's a lot of cave exploration going on still in Florida. There's tons of it still happening right now. Even in the popular caves, they haven't even fully been, fully explored. So pretty neat. Oh, here you go, Mike. Have you ever had a dive go so bad that it made you question continuing to cave dive? So have you ever had a tragic event or something where you maybe were going to not continue? I know you've had a lot.
Not to the extent that I wouldn't continue, but I've been on several, more than I should admit. I've been on dives where we had fatalities and or we had to go recover one of our friends, and it is difficult, but at the same time, it's so ingrained into us that we just have to keep going, So, but yeah, and if you go long enough without diving, your whole personality starts to change and start getting really grumpy and aggressive. And on several occasions, my wife has told me, "Don't you have somewhere you can go diving this weekend?"
It's true.
So, yeah, it's just part of us.
Here's a comment that Gus added. I'm the absolute worst at describing what I saw in my dives to the scientists. I'm always like, it was a white thing, like this big and had some legs, I think. So that's Gus's level of science. I'm a little bit better. I'll be like, and it was see-through. So I add that clarification. Let's see, reading. Let me read this. Do you work on your physical condition to maintain shape for diving, Mike?
No, I'm really bad about that. And sometimes I'll have a trip coming up where, like, they were going to take me to this sump, and so I knew that there was close to a mile. It was going to take us about 4 hours to get to the water in this cave. And they had a whole team of people to carry my equipment, but there was going to be close to a mile of crawling. And so on that particular one, for about a month ahead of time, I worked out a little bit, you know, a little bit. And I thought, you know what, I'm ready for this. And it still kicked my butt. So, but most of the time, no, I just work. Daily life keeps me in shape well enough to.
I mean, yeah, he's shredded, and it's natural. So.
If you could only dive 3 caves for the rest of your life, what would they be? And why? See, that's really a difficult question for me, because I love exploring. And so it's the unknown. If you gave me a cave like the Crystal Caves of the Bahamas and you said you have to choose between this dive here or this dirty cenote in the Yucatan that nobody has any idea where it goes, I mean, I would be there. It's not so much about what you get to see as the moment that you're in. It's like visiting a chapel, you know. And when you're exploring, it doesn't matter how nice it is or how bad it is. You're going somewhere that nobody has ever been. Now, it's better if it's nice, okay? But
It is really addictive. I mean, I've only sampled it when I'm with Mike, and two things can happen that I learned that Mike had to reel me in. Number one, you absolutely lose a conception of time. You do. You're just into the moment by moment of exploration. You're just zoned in. It's fascinating. And you don't want to go back. You're like, I know it keeps going. And when I was with him, he's like, I know it keeps going, and we're going back. Yeah. That's it. We found this. It's time, and we're going to tie off here, and it'll be there. And that is discipline. You have to stop. You have to be disciplined to these plans, right? So it's very addictive to want to keep going. But remember, when you keep going, you've gone further back. So God forbid something happens. Did you bring enough gas to get you all the way back to the entrance? And I could see
then I've been
the temptation.
With people who don't, the plan is just a guideline, and so when they're not back on schedule, then you start thinking that something's gone wrong, and we need to start planning for a rescue or recovery, and that's always hard. And then the people come out and say, "Oh no, we just stayed a little extra time." You're like, "No, you don't do it that way."
They'll get really mad too. They won't want you to go with them anymore. If you start doing that and you're part of a team and you're pushing these limits, they're not going to want you to be part of the team. And it's because you're risking everybody's life. So you can't do it.
Yeah, you got to stick to the plan.
So we'll just take a few more. We've been on for a long time. It's just been super interesting. Let's see. That's funny. Let's see. I don't know. There's a few. We'll take like one more really good question. Well,
what's for lunch today? That's important.
Yeah, we're gonna find out soon. That's a good one. We'll end with this one, Mike. Is there a dive that was so sketchy that you wouldn't do it again? I was actually thinking about asking him a similar question, but you worded it well. Is there something that you're just like, never again, am I going to do that?
Well, the dive that we lost Shane Thompson on, the day before, we had a discussion about how sketchy everything was, because we were going through this pile of rocks, basically these piles of rocks, and how dangerous that is. And the goal of exploring this cave was to open it up to the public. you know, so that they could have cave diving. They could use it for training and things like that. And I was sitting with Kurt Bowen, and I said, you know what, this place will never be safe. You know, even if you opened up some areas, it was just too dangerous, and it'll never be safe. So what's the point of us even being here if it's so sketchy and there's no way of making it safe? And I think that's probably one of the things that led to Shane making the decision that he wanted to see the end of the line, is because he knew that we were about to recommend they close the cave and not even allow people to cave dive in it. And so, but, and you know, then he passed away, and we had to recover him and all that.
So there you go. There is places
There
that are too scared, too bad, too sketchy.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody.
And I will go back and at some point in the next few days and read the questions and reply to them if I can. Just texting.
Yeah. So until the next one, take care. And we have a really powerful episode coming up in Dive Talk. It's a 2-hour-long episode. I know if I announce what it is, I'll probably immediately get a text message from Gus that I won't want to read. It's riveting. I think it's the most riveting episode we've ever done. I cried during it. Get ready. This is a powerful episode, and get ready. It's coming out, I think, next Friday is what I understand. So tune in, everybody. DiveTalkGo.com is live. If you want to order a Go, it's available. DiveTalkAcademy.com is this close from being launched. And
Wait, Gus is saying something.
oh, let's see. One last comment here from Gus. Maybe 2 1-hour episodes. So the 2-hour episodes, he's editing it. He may break it up into 2 1-hour episodes. But whew, wow, it's a powerful one. See you, everybody.